Tamara Markey. I am not a native of Indiana. I've been living in the state for about 5 years, but I've spent a significant portion of my lifetime here at college. After college, I worked as an engineer for Amoco Oil and then BP Pipelines for about 9 years. I stayed at home raising children for about 12 years and then went back to school to pursue a master's in education in engineering technology, and I've been a teacher for 4 years.
STEM, what is STEM?
Science, technology, engineering, math is, of course, the quick answer. STEM stands for those particular subject areas. But when I think of STEM, I don't think about just those subject areas. For me, STEM means thinking critically, means solving problems, collaboration, being able to take a problem and dissect it, understand what the problem is, and maybe have a vision of what a solution means. You may or may not have that. You may discover what that is as you try to solve the problem, but being able to define the problem, coming up with ideas to brainstorm to solve that problem, and then developing a solution and testing it and coming up with some type of deliverable or prototype. And that could be a process that's taken in science, technology, engineering, math, art, literature. You know, it's not just unique to those 4 subject areas that STEM stands for.
Your students, talk to me about how you encourage and motivate your students to be all that they can be.
So I love my students. I do. Every single year I am excited about them coming into my classroom. Probably about a month before they arrive, I get a roster, and so I'm able to go into our grading system and I see the students, and most of the students have pictures that they've taken somewhere along their academic career. There might be, you know, a little bit of information that I'm able to gather from their student profile. And I begin praying for each of those students. So I really feel like before they ever step foot in this classroom, there's been this relationship established that they're not even aware of. And I start observing right away from day one. We play the name game. They think it's for them to learn each other's names, but it's really for me to figure out how to learn 160 plus names as quickly as possible, because it's my goal within a week to know everyone's name. So we play this name game, and the entire time I'm memorizing names. It's important to make that connection with the students so that as soon as I see you, I can say, "Good morning, Maurice." And you just don't understand how that really makes them light up if within a couple of days they're like, "Man, she knows my name." And when I call on them, I know their name. And that is the beginning of the relationship. I learn who they are outside of the classroom, and that is how I motivate them. I said before that my platform was instructional equity. Well, I don't believe that education can begin until I know a lot about the student. I need to understand their academic background. I need to understand their interest. I need to have a pretty general understanding, and it may turn into more specifics about what they're experiencing outside of my classroom. Because the truth of the matter is, a lot of the students that come and sit in the classroom, you can't even imagine what they've gone through that day before they've come into the classroom. And so learning doesn't begin until you start to make those connections. I do it through conversation. Sometimes I'll have them fill out a survey, a Google form. I conference with the students. Sometimes it's a formal conference where I'll call them up to my desk and ask questions. Sometimes it's really informal. I'm just walking around the classroom, looking at what they're doing, asking them about their weekend, what extracurriculars they might be involved in. But learning does not begin until you make that connection. And so I believe that is what motivates my students. Additionally, I believe in my students. I believe in them even when they don't. And when they know that they can trust you, that you believe in them, that you have expectations for them, they begin to rise to those expectations.
So looking back on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, as African Americans, where are we in the dream and why?
Well, I do believe that we've accomplished a lot. I mean, I don't know that I ever thought that we would have a black president in my lifetime, so that was a huge accomplishment. And we've made great strides in many different areas. You know, we have representation in areas that you know, are very admirable, and we've accomplished a lot. However, the big however, you know, when I think about Dr. Martin Luther King's dream and his vision, I really like to think of it as a vision because he was a visionary. It was based on, you know, justice and unity and equity and prosperity. When I think about those cornerstones today, we have so much injustice. You know, if you look at the incarceration rate of African Americans compared to that of whites, we're talking 5 to 6 times the incarceration rate. Okay, equity. Let's talk about equity. Educational equity alone, the achievement gap, performance in math and reading of African American students as compared to whites. Disheartening, the gap, you know, we score anywhere from 25 to 30 percentage points lower in those areas, depending on the grade level. Inequity in, you know, salary, inequity in representation at the boardroom, in the classroom, at a desk, just in any job. You know, there's so much inequity that currently exists. Prosperity. I mean, look at the divide of the haves and the have-nots. So there are lots of areas that we are far from achieving the dream, and there is a lot more work that needs to be done.
When we look at corporate America, what do you see in terms of race in corporate America, and how could they assist in helping us get closer to achieving the dream?
Yeah, lack of representation is what I see. You know, it doesn't take a genius to realize why diversity is so important. And we lack representation in many arenas. I've gotten used to kind of being a one and only. That's what I'll call it, a one and only. So in a STEM related field with a STEM background, engineering background, I'm used to being one of the only blacks, one of the only women. But as long as that is occurring, as long as there is lack of representation, we aren't achieving our best. And those in corporate positions that, you know, want to have diversity, they realize that. There's a reason that they are investing in diversity programs. They know that it can ultimately benefit their bottom line. But we have a lot of unconscious biases that keep that progress from truly happening. So when I think about what corporations need to do, you know, we need to have the difficult discussions, the ones that we've stopped having in the name of tolerance. Tolerance doesn't mean that I stop seeing color. I mean, let's be realistic. We all see color. I'm always leery when someone tells me they don't see color. But we need to embrace that color, and we need to embrace the differences. We've got to invest in our community. Corporations need to be investing, putting their money where their mouth is. You know, we talk about we want representation. Well, corporations need to be investing in the schools, in the school systems, in our future in order to have the representation, in order to give exposure where exposure is currently lacking, so that we can have representation at the corporate level. We've got to stop making excuses, pigeonholing individuals based upon what we believe that they're capable of, and giving individuals an opportunity and a chance. We get really comfortable with bringing in our own because we're comfortable with our own. You know, we get comfortable bringing in our own because that person that we really don't understand, whose culture we really don't understand, they make us nervous, they make us scared. And fear is what keeps us from making that progress. So we need some progressive individuals in corporate America that are going to put down their foot and say, hey, you know, we've interviewed 20 people for said position and there's no representation of color. There's some qualified people of color for this position. Let's be deliberate in going out and recruiting those people of color and not just checking the box, like truly, you know, taking into account that we want this skill set and we're going to go find that individual, that person of color that has that skill set until we have some decent representation in corporate America.
In your opinion, what role are we as African Americans playing to fulfill the dream? What could we be doing better or different?
You know, I would venture to say that a lot of us would say we need another Dr. Martin Luther King, right? I mean, if you look at the civil rights movement, they accomplished so much because it was a movement. There was a synergy that existed. There were a lot of people that were coming together for a single cause, and they were able, with a lot of struggle, but they were able to make some great strides. And as I think about our current society, we've accomplished a lot, like I said before, but we're kind of in pockets. You know, we're in this very transient state, very self-centered, you know, all about accomplishments for ourselves, for our immediate family. And there's nothing wrong with that, but at some point, I think we all have to take personal responsibility to really reflect upon that dream and ask ourselves, what are we doing? You know, collectively, we can do so much. So if we were able to have that type of movement, that the civil rights movement, and come together to collectively focus on, you know, issues, that would be great. But we have to think about what we as individuals are able to do in our everyday lives, educating our younger generation, not letting that dream be lost. You know, I'm not sure, do our kids read the speech now? You know, do they know what the vision was of Dr. Martin Luther King? You know, are they analyzing our current state and really understanding, you know, where we came from, where we still have yet to go? If, you know, I think about the scripture that says people perish for a lack of vision, a lack of knowledge, right? You know, if we are not educating our young, if we, our generation, my generation, is not well educated about where we came from and where we have yet to be, we're bound to repeat history. And I think we're actually seeing a lot of that currently in our society.
Absolutely. As a country, is Dr. Martin Luther King's dream still alive and well? Or are there pockets?
Definitely pockets. And I try to see the good in people. I really do. And I do believe that there are more people out there that want to see the dream realized, they're willing to be educated. They have hearts to do the right thing. And I think that we've got to just take the time to bring more people on board. Okay, so I'm talking, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King would say, grabbing hands of those that have cultural differences and enlightening others as we too are enlightened, and understanding what work needs to be done. The pockets that exist, you know, they've got to keep it on, trying to make progress and trying to influence those that may not be actively pursuing that vision, King's vision, in order to get work done, to make progress. It's a hard job. I don't, you know, I try to do what I can in the classroom, but I feel like it's never enough.